All right. Let's go a little further here because I'm about to wrap it up now. So the Holy Spirit awakens this dormant DNA. And there's not a lot of information on this, but we know that the Holy Spirit awakens us because he awakens memory. And memory is stored in the DNA. We cannot access this higher memory until we develop the fruit. And ye shall know by their fruit. Not only will you know them, but ye shall know thyself by the fruit. Ye shall know the Christ. I feel myself slipping somewhere. By the fruit. And those that have followed my teaching, you understand, we all know about the nine fruits, the 9 different aspects of the one fruit, of the Spirit. But when we understand the fruit of the Spirit, we understand that there is only one fruit. There's only one fruit. There's only one fruit. There's only one fruit. There are 9 aspects that we see the fruit displaying themselves, but there's only one. Galatians 5, verse 22. There are virtues that represent the fruit, but there's only one, Frankie. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And when we understand the fruit, all you need is one of them. You have one, you get all. You can't have love without self-control. You can't have gentleness without self-control, and you can't have self-control without gentleness. You cannot have goodness without faithfulness, and you can't have faithfulness without goodness. You can't have patience without peace, and you cannot have peace without patience. You cannot have joy without kindness, and you cannot have kindness without joy. All you need is one. I was teaching something to one of the younger prophets that follows my teaching, and they said, you talk about the 9 fruit, and I've been meditating on all 9 of them. And I said, it's a waste of time. I said, just meditate on one. And they looked and said, why? I said, because remember, with the fruit carries seed. As long as you develop one, whether it's self-control, whether it's kindness, whether it's love, whether it's patience, whether it's peace, whether it's gentleness, whether it's faithfulness, whether it's joy, goodness. As long as you develop one, you will naturally gather the others. You try to go after every one of them, you lose and gather nothing. Oh, Jesus. Now, the Holy Spirit, which will bring all things to your remembrance, that is waking up the other strands of DNA. The other strands of DNA. This is waking up your spiritual lineage. There's an aspect of your DNA, because remember, there's the lower function or the lower part of your DNA that is just connected to the gross body, the physical body, and which is D1, and D2, which is the emotional body as well. Are you guys hearing me? So this is why it's a helix of only 2, because it only connects the DNA in its fallen state only connects to D1, which is the physical body archetype of how it looks, and D2, which is the emotional body. You know, someone might be saying, well, what do you mean? Well, they did studies on this type of stuff, people. They did studies on this type of thing. They took victims that were, for example, in the Holocaust and was being starved. And this was, 2 generations ago, that were being starved, and they followed around the ancestors of these people, and they noticed that most of these children of these ancestors were dealing with peculiar diseases that were connected, and this is epigenetics when you get into epigenetics, that were connected through the trauma. So they started to realize very early that DNA also carries trauma. In biblical term, we call it generational curse. That's why I tell you that the devil that you're fighting, you're not the first one in your family to deal with that. Your child is dealing with alcoholism. He's not the first one to deal with that demon. It's encoded. And this is why we have to awaken Christ's DNA within us. So they followed around, this was certain survivors of the Holocaust that went through a very traumatic type of abuse and was being starved. And then they looked at their ancestors, and most of all of the children of this particular group that were being starved were dealing with blood sugar issues, was dealing with high blood pressure, and all of these different peculiar things at a much higher rate because of the trauma. And they realized very quickly that the DNA also stores the trauma because it is storing the information from D1 and D2, Dimension 1 and Dimension 2, that is afflicted on it from the D3, which is the ego. As we develop the fruit, as we develop the fruit of the Spirit, we awaken the Christ within us, and we awaken the lineage, the holy lineage. Remember, there's a holy lineage, which is known as the second Adam. That's our holy lineage. It is a holy lineage that is immortal. It is a holy lineage, but it can only be awakened when we dismember the ego to remember the Christ. Take ye, this is my body. This is my blood. Do this to remember. To remember. To put back the code of the original state that God created you in. The original state that you are created in. You cannot remember me as long as you have the ego. This is why if any man chooses to follow the Christ within, he must pick up the cross and dismember his ego. Oh, Jesus, oh God. Not walk around with the cross around your neck like the dogmatics and say that you're a follower because you have a cross around your neck. Not to walk around and quote and say cool Christian terminology so people can know that you're a follower of him. But if anyone chooses to follow the Christ within, he must pick up the cross. Not my cross, but his own cross. My cross was an archetype of what he must do with his own cross, Frankie. He must dismember his ego to remember the Christ. No man can serve two masters. You cannot have the ego and the Christ. No man can serve two masters. He would love one and hate the other. So until we dismember the ego. What dismembers the ego? How do you dismember the ego? I just told you how to dismember it. I just told you how to dismember it. Get the fruit. Love dismembers the ego. Self-control dismembers the ego. Gentleness dismembers the ego. Faithfulness dismembers the ego. Goodness dismembers the ego. Kindness dismembers the ego. When we dismember it, then we can remember the Christ. And when this begins to take place, you no longer are operating out of the will of the ego or the lower mind. But now you have triggered the higher mind. And his ways are far beyond your own ways. His thoughts are far beyond your own thoughts. It's talking about your lower mind, you know. But you have to dismember it. And as you dismember it, you awaken the spiritual DNA. This is also in some of my writings that I've been writing and studying. Some people say, what do you do? I just write. And I study this for the School of the Prophets. This is just part one. I'm going to be going a lot more in depth in Patreon about this and about the junk DNA and why there's such a rush to not awaken this DNA. You know, the world mind does not want you to awaken this. Instead of awakening this, they want you to connect machines to you. They want you to do biotech and implant stuff in you. You look at what Elon Musk is creating now, where they can put a chip in you and now control limbs and add limbs to you. This is what they want you to do. They don't want you to awaken the junk DNA of the Christ. Instead, they want you to fall deeper into matter and to mix the lower mind with technology and create what is known as the mark of the beast. And the beast is the lower mind. It is the scrupulous, duplicitous nature of the lower mind.